the mask falls, and what you're left with is fear, insecurity, doubt dressed up to sound like wisdom. Think about it. How many dreams have died behind excuses that sounded logical? How many opportunities were missed because someone convinced themselves it wasn't the right time, or that they weren't good enough, or that someone else was better suited for the job? Excuses don't kill you, they just slowly drain your potential until you forget it was ever there. They shrink your world, one small decision at a time. You don't overcome excuses by arguing with them. You kill them with action. You do the thing despite the doubt. You move forward while being uncertain. You take the first step, not because everything is clear, but because you know clarity comes from doing, not waiting. Action exposes excuses. When you take even one small step, the fear loses its grip. The logic starts to fall apart. You realize most of the limits were never real. They were just boundaries you agreed to believe in. That's the shift, when you begin to see excuses not as truth, but as traps. When you recognize that every time you say, "I'll start tomorrow," you're making a deal with your comfort zone. And that deal costs you everything. Excuses are persuasive, but they are powerless against consistent effort. They can't hold their shape when you move. They can't survive the pressure of action. Once you see them for what they are, they lose their strength. And you gain yours. Motivation fades, discipline wins. In the beginning, motivation feels like a fire. It's strong, exciting, and it pushes you to act. Maybe it's a new goal, a New Year's resolution, a song, a video, or even a moment of inspiration that gets your heart racing. You feel unstoppable, like this time will be different. This time you'll follow through, and for a while you do. You show up, you push hard, and you ride the high of that motivation. But then life happens, you get tired. Things get hard, the novelty wears off, and suddenly, the fire that once burned so hot starts to flicker. The energy you had is gone, the motivation, it's silent, and in that silence, you're faced with a choice. Stop and wait for that feeling to come back, or keep going without it. That's the moment where most people quit. They say they lost motivation, as if that's the end of the story. But it's not, because what you really need in that moment isn't more motivation, it's discipline. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It shows up when motivation leaves. It's the voice in your head that says, do it anyway. Discipline is boring, unglamorous, and quiet. It doesn't give you a rush, it doesn't make you feel invincible, but it builds something far more valuable, consistency. And consistency is what leads to real progress, not random bursts of energy, but repeated action over time. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is the engine. One starts the journey, the other keeps it going. That's why the people who succeed in anything, fitness, business, creativity, personal growth, are not the ones who are always motivated. They're the ones who do the work even on the days they don't want to. They show up when it's raining, when it's cold, when no one is clapping for them. They understand that feelings come and go, but habits are built through action. You won't always feel like it. That's the truth most people don't want to hear. There will be days when you're exhausted, unmotivated, and full of doubt. That's where discipline steps in, not as a feeling, but as a decision. You don't have to be inspired to keep going. You just have to commit. One more rep, one more call, one more page, one more day of doing the thing you said you would do. Waiting on motivation is a trap. It turns your goals into wishes. But when you lean on discipline, you take control. You stop relying on emotion and start relying on action. And over time, discipline becomes part of who you are. You don't need to feel like working out, you just do. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment, you create it. That's how progress is made, not in the hype, but in the hard, not in the mood, but in the movement. That's how you win, every time. Progress begins where comfort ends. That's the line nobody wants to hear. but it's the one truth that separates those who grow from those who stay stuck. Comfort feels good. It's warm, familiar, and safe. It's the routine you know, the habits you've built, the limits you've accepted. And for a while, there's nothing wrong with that. Comfort gives rest, it gives recovery. But if you stay there too long, comfort becomes a trap. A quiet, invisible one. You stop moving forward not because you've failed, but because you've settled. Growth lives outside the walls of what feels easy. It lives in resistance, in challenge, in uncertainty. Progress doesn't show up when you're doing what you've always done. It shows up when you push past what you thought was possible. That's where the stretch happens. That's where character is built. That's where limits get broken, but only if you're willing to step into discomfort. Discomfort is the signal that you're on the edge of something new. It means you're trying, risking, learning. And yes, it means you might fail, but it also means you're evolving. Too many people avoid that tension. They stay in their bubble because it feels safe, but safe isn't the same as fulfilled. You weren't built to coast. You weren't made to do the same thing every day and call that a life. You were built for movement, for impact. For more and more doesn't come from doing what's easy. Ask yourself, when's the last time you did something that scared you? Something that stretched you, that pushed you out of routine and forced you to grow. If it's been a while, chances are you've been stuck in the comfort zone. That zone is clever. It convinces you that avoiding stress is the same as protecting your peace. But the truth is, growth is